I did not predict this, did not think this was going to happen. How did this happen? What the hell is going on? Why does Zinedine Zidane want to go back?
It's like an episode of Friends, isn't it? Ross and Rachel, I don't know the characters' names. Zidane and Florentino were only on a break, right? Overwhelming love for the club seems to be the main answer. But if you want the political answer, Zidane won the power battle when he said in the build-up to, let's say, spring last year, and he was saying to Florentino, this is how I want to change things. I don't want you talking about Kepa or Courtois anymore. I want Kehler and who's that kid? Oh yeah, Luka Zidane. I want him as the number 2 goalkeeper. And I want to clear this fella out, Bale, and I want to do this and that and the next thing. He wanted the mandate to step into the breach of this no director of football that the club suffer from, in my point of view, and the post to which Zidane should have been appointed yesterday rather than coach. But when that battle was being argued out with the president, it turns out Florentino Perez last year got a bit complacent. He thought, Zidane is enjoying this so much, he's so attached to the club that I can reassert myself as president. I can say no to him on this issue and that issue. And by May 31st, after beating Liverpool in Kiev, when Zidane walked away, it turns out he really meant, and this is a thread of every conversation you must have about Zidane, from the moment he took over in January 16, after Benitez was sacked, until the moment he left, he was an absolute rarity. And this might be less interesting to off-the-ball viewers and listeners because it's about the pitch. But we know he won a league and he won 3 Champions League as head coach. When he speaks, and I think this doesn't just affect viewers and fans and journalists, but it affects the players, he tells the truth, Ger. It's really radical to say that about a lead football person. But when Zidane answers questions, you get frankness. He will confront issues. He'll tell you when he's angry. He will turn on the charm. He uses wit. But when he left on May 31st, he said things like, maybe I'll be back after a rest. This isn't goodbye. It's only hasta luego. See you later. He pointed out that he felt that a short, sharp shock for the squad was vital. He laid trails which were picked up yesterday, and I agree with you, because there was a will from Florentino Perez, but not the rest of his board, to try and repatriate Jose Mourinho. When it became clear to Florentino Perez that he had no support around the club for that idea, apparently according to Zidane, the first phone call to Zidane convinced him, and that was last week. And they've been building on this announcement. I think 1 or 2 of the players knew or suspected going into the Valladolid game at the weekend. None of us in the media, not one person had it as a breaking story. Zidane will be appointed next week. By yesterday, it began to become clear. But you're right. It is an interesting turn of events on a personal basis, just because of my admiration for what he's like as a person, what he was like as a footballer, and what he was definitely like as somebody who can oversee a project. I'm absolutely thrilled to have Zidane back, and particularly in comparison to Jose Mourinho, Ger.
Is this the type of thing that this seems to be the type of thing that used to happen with Real Madrid in like the 70s and 80s, where a manager would walk away and would come back? You know, I think Toshak had 2 spells. There was a bunch of other people around that time who had 2 spells.
Capello, 2 single seasons, 2 titles. You know, it does happen a lot at the club.
Why is that?
I think that it is a very alluring club. Whether you are a fan, whether you don't like them particularly because Liverpool's your passion or Barcelona's your passion. I suppose name your clubs who look at the behemoth and resent them. I think that the majority of people who get associated with the Bernabeu, with the history, with constantly winning, there is something, a layer of affection or devotion, which goes above the salary packet and which goes above the easy life that certain stars can have under this president. You can request a little bit of time off, a little bit of time to be with your sponsors. You can play golf constantly like Gareth Bale, which isn't particularly good for his musculature or his injury record, and you can get away with it. Above and beyond the easy life, there is something inspirational about being associated with Real Madrid. Anybody who says there isn't is either underinformed or bitter, because you go to the training ground, you go to the stadium, you sniff the history. If you want to become part of it, that's an enormously alluring thing. You're treated well, you're paid well. It's a little bit, no, gosh. It's a little bit like, for Bond fans, it's a little bit like Smersh. Everything's great until you fail a mission and then you're out. But instead of being fed to the sharks, you can be repatriated and brought back. And everybody who goes into Real Madrid knows that the penalty for failure is very high. But once you're out, it does not mean that people lose affection or regard for you. And most people who are asked to come back do come back.
How deep-rooted are some of the conflicts we've seen over the past couple of weeks, really, Graham? Like Bale versus the entire dressing room, Sergio Ramos versus Florentino Perez, as we've seen over the last couple of days. Are these the sort of things that Zinedine Zidane and just him being there can fix?
First of all, it's not so bad with poor old Gareth Bale. They do. Some of the players take the mickey out of him a little bit, but the way in which the remarks by, for example, Courtois were reported takes out of proportion what the rest of the squad think about Gareth Bale. There is a division. He's only got one or two to whom he's close, but to call it outright, it's a fractious thing. And it divides the dressing room because he doesn't have Spanish, because he doesn't involve himself greatly in anything outside the training ground. But there have been many hundreds of top footballers who've lived that way. The difficulty, I suppose, is when it all layers one on top of the other. He lives in his chosen way and he's either not fit or he's playing and he's not playing particularly well. Then you get an issue. Zidane wanted Bale out. So I think that to twist the kaleidoscope a little bit on, now there is a problem because Bale knows that his coach doesn't fancy him and will ask the club to clear him out in the summer, but he's got a contract till 2022. That is a really big club issue. Whether it's necessarily an issue on the playing side between now and May, I'm not so convinced. The last time Zidane came in his first 17 games, he scored, I think the club scored 57 goals. They won't do that because there's no Cristiano Ronaldo. Won 14, drew 2, lost 1. Right in front of him now is an injury list. There are problems with Isco. And they've also got Getafe 6 points behind, breathing down the neck, and Atleti 5 points ahead in third place. But the fixture list is beautiful. Number one, they'll beat Celta this weekend. Some of them will have 2 weeks off, but Zidane will have 2 weeks to plan. And then beyond then and the end of the season, they've probably got 2 testing games. I mean that, 2 testing games. Valencia away and Getafe away. Other than that, Zidane can imprint on this end to the season. But that's the risk he's taken. You pointed out that there are some flaws, there are some problems, and he doesn't want to take over and screw up the remainder of the season. So there is a level of risk. I agree with you.
Graham, do we know if Zinedine Zidane was approached or if he was interested in any of the other jobs that were spoken about over the last couple of months? Manchester United, for one, Chelsea, rather more tenuously.
I didn't believe that there were concerted moves to bring Zidane into United. I also have trouble seeing him in a country where he's not fluent. He has some smatterings of English, there's absolutely no doubt about that. But I have a major concern about the idea of Zidane either coaching or handling the media in English, and I think he felt the same. About Juventus, I don't know. There are clear signs there that we seem to be looking at the end of the Allegri era. I think that there's a mutual, unless they pull it back from the brink, there is probably going to be an opportunity there. And I can imagine Zidane being back in Turin. But we go back to the original point. Real Madrid has a special hold on him. I think he won his power battle. I think he's come in knowing that when Zidane says to the president, this is what I want, then that's what he gets. And it's good. I was told by somebody that Madrid used to consult on signings, he's an ex-player, that the number one priority in Zinedine Zidane's life are his 3 boys who are playing football, and that he will make almost any personal decision based on that. So I expect to see Lucas Zidane promoted. I expect to see Zidane showing that this is the club that he wanted above all others. Whether he was approached or not is now just dust on the floor.
Was there no temptation to ride off into the sunset with the greatest short managerial career in the history of the game and go, yeah, I came, I saw, I won everything, I left?
Well, he said in May, I want to keep on linking May 31st to yesterday. In May 31st, he said, because a couple of months earlier, remember, he said, I want to stay at Real Madrid for years and years. I could finish my coaching career here. And then by May 31st, he was out. And he said at the time, I'm leaving for very specific reasons. I'm not anywhere near tired of coaching. That's been borne true. So I think the temptation is, the answer to your question is no. And while I absolutely believe that there was an opportunity for Florentino Perez to look at his club, look at Zidane's huge, great big armory of talents, and the way in which Zidane paved the way for his own success, because before he became coach to inherit from Benitez, he was the one planning the squad. He was the one persuading guys to come. He was the one advising the president who should be sold and who should be bought, and it worked very well. When he took over, he reaped the rewards of his own harvest. It was his work. When he went away, he was coaching well, but nobody was doing that work underneath. And I think Zidane should have been offered, and I think Zidane should have been persuaded at all costs to try and become the Johan Cruyff, the consigliere, the technical director, I don't care what you call it, the living football brain to complement Florentino Perez's business and commerce skills and his ambitions. And I think that's a missed opportunity. But no, I think there was no temptation to say, thank you, I'll sign off on that project. I came in 2.5 years, 3 Champions League. Now Zidane is hungry to be back and working. I suppose the surprise is that it's now rather than June when he could start with a clean slate, get players out, no danger of what one talked about, the hangover, the aftermath of both the Lopetegui and the Solari eras impacting on him. So I guess we salute him as a brave man this morning, right?
It is the most amazing Real Madrid season of all time when you consider all the way back to just before the World Cup, where the entire country's World Cup is blown to smithereens. That manager gets burned out, his replacement gets burned out, and they go back to the guy they had before it all happened. Is there any sense anywhere of any smattering of guilt that Florentino Perez has ruined an entire country's chance of winning the World Cup?
One of the things above your journalistic integrity that I've always loved is your sense of humour, Joe. You, I know, and everybody producing, everybody watching knows the answer to that question already, so I will duck it or say no.
Graham, good stuff. Thanks a million.
See you, lads.
Graham Hunter giving us some thoughts on that is a remarkable, it is the most Real Madrid story of all time, and yet I'm still a little bit shocked by it.